Hey friends, welcome back to the cabin, and today's video is going to be another installment in the series Home Dairy, and I wanted to bring you along as I take my butter and turn it into ghee. Okay, when you want to make ghee, you want to start with the very best quality of butter that you can find. And as you see here, this is our own homemade butter from our girl Lily. But if you don't have access to your own homemade butter, you can certainly go to the grocery store and purchase unsalted butter. And we're going to start with a medium to low flame. And so what we're doing here is we're going to gently just melt this butter down, and we're not going to handle it a lot. We're just going to make sure that it's melting and it's not, you don't want it to scorch or get too hot on the bottom. As you can see, we're almost completely melted down. Now I will do some gentle stirring from time to time, but as the process goes on, I'm going to be very careful to not stir the bottom. And the reason is that as the milk solids separate, they will fall to the bottom of the pot, and we don't want to incorporate them back in. But the next step that we're looking for in this is for it to start foaming up. And then after, you may even hear a crackling sound, and that would be the moisture that is cooking out. Okay, you can see now that it's beginning to try to foam up a little bit. And so I'm going to adjust my flame down just a little bit. And like I said, I'm not going to over stir because I don't want to disturb any of the milk solids that would fall to the bottom, but we're not to that point yet. As you see it, gently simmer. What that's doing is that is actually cooking the moisture off, and that is a good thing. Now you can see the foam is beginning to build, and this is why we wanted an oversized pot, because it can foam up pretty high and it can boil over really quick, and I learned that from experience. Now some videos I have watched, and they're very good videos, but some of them recommend removing the foam off the top as it comes up. But what I have found is that when I do that, I'm also removing some of that precious oil that I'm trying to capture in the first place. So what I do is, just with a little bit of patience, I just let it cook down, and those milk solids that is in the foam will just fall to the bottom. So I don't worry about that. I don't try to skim it off. I just let it just continue to cook. You can see the foam. Now, store-bought butter may have a higher percentage of water in it, and that is just from the processing of it at the plant. But now, home butter, we rinse it, but then we do squeeze the outside liquid, or the outside water that I rinsed it with, I kind of squeeze it off. And so I don't have a lot of excess. The water that we're cooking off in this is what is just naturally incorporated in there. But store-bought butter, to my understanding, has a higher percentage of water. So you may hear a crackling sound, more of a like an oil and water mixture, like you would have if you got water into your skillet of hot grease. But we won't have that as much in our home butter, because it's not as processed. But you can see the foam, and that's actually the milk solids. If you've ever priced ghee in the grocery store, you probably know that it's pretty high. I was looking at it just a few days ago, and it was somewhere between $10 and $12 for a 12-ounce jar. And some ghees in the store also blended with other oils. So you can make this at home for much, much less, and you'll have the satisfaction of having made it yourself. And that's what you need to do. You need to learn as many homestead skills as you can and have that experience under your belt, and then you'll have that to draw back on time and time again. And that's what homesteading is about, providing as much as you can by your own hand for your family. I think from a pound of butter, you can get, of store-bought butter, you can get anywhere from 1/2 of a pint to 3/4 of a pint. So you're beginning to see that the foam is already kind of settled down. And I'm not going to over stir. I'm going to pull it back so that you can see, and we're not going to scrape the bottom. But what will happen is this milk will actually turn a tan or a light brown. And that's a sign that you're getting close, or you are to the point where you want to be with your ghee. Now we've got a little ways to go. So, okay, if you look, you can see that the foam is settling down more and more, and the bubbles are starting to get a little bit bigger. So we're just letting it go through its process, and it's cooking off the moisture and actually separating and cooking the milk solids. So what we have with butter is we have moisture, we have milk fat, and we have milk solids. And so to make the ghee, that's the two things that we want to remove, is the water or moisture and the milk solids. And when we get to the end, it will have a nutty, sweet, almost popcorn aroma. It smells delicious. And ghee is so much better for you than some of the other oils that you can buy in the store, like some of the processed oils, the pressed oils like canola oil or corn oil. Those are not actually good for you. And I discovered back several years ago that olive oil, which was the health craze at the time, I discovered that olive oil, when it's heated, it breaks down and it is not nearly as beneficial. So looking for an alternative, I discovered ghee. Well, everything just kind of came together about the same time that we purchased our milk cow and we were making butter. Well, then I began to study ghee and realized that I had the ways and means to make it myself. And so it was just a natural progression to go from that. That's another product from the homestead, from our sweet cow. And that's what it's about. It's about self-sufficiency, self-reliance, and being able to provide for your family from as much as you can off the land. And this is just an extension of that. Plus, it's about as healthy as you can get, because I know exactly what is in this. I know what my cow ate. I know her health and how healthy she is. And all of that just interprets over into our diet. And it's just a blessing beyond means. It's just a wonderful thing to be able to do that for your family. Now you see the bubbles are getting a little bigger and a little bigger. This homestead life is a journey, and you can start your journey anywhere you are at this very moment. If you live in an apartment, or if you live in town and you don't have any room or any acreage, start learning those skills. And this is a great one right here, because you can start a healthier diet to share with your family right here with this ghee. I use it to cook. We cook our eggs in it when we scramble or fry eggs. I use it a lot of times when I make biscuits. I can use it in place of lard, but I'm a very very good proponent of lard though, so they kind of battle back and forth. I love my lard, and lard, good clean lard, is very, very good for you. I encourage you to stay away from hydrogenated oils such as any kind of shortening, vegetable or not, and any of the pressed oils. If you can stay away from those, it's just a step in the right direction, a step to better health. Now you can see it's just kind of wanting to separate itself a little bit. It's the foam on top is beginning to space out a little bit, and we're just working it down. Now, one thing you want to do with ghee is you want to be very, very attentive to it. Don't walk off and leave it, because it will burn in a hurry. So you want to keep your eye on it, and there will be a point that you can go that will, what I call the point of no return. You can ruin it, and it happens very quickly. But don't let that scare you, because I'm going to show you where you need to be before you get to that point. Now, I'm not touching the bottom because there are milk solids on the bottom. We're just letting all this cook down. But going back to the homestead, and start learning skills now. You can homestead in place. My mama used to say, bloom where you're planted. Well, homestead where you're planted. If you're in town in an apartment, learn skills. Learn to make the ghee. Learn to can. Learn to preserve. If you're afraid of pressure canning, start with what I would suggest you do this anyway. Start with water bath canning. It's a very natural step in preserving food. And there's wonderful books out there and wonderful videos to get you started. But learn those skills and have those skills under your belt. And then when the day comes that you venture off onto your own homestead or wherever your dream takes you, you're already ahead of the game with those skills, and your family's already healthier and better for it. Now you see, look, we're seeing less and less of the foam on top, and you're beginning to see that really beautiful golden color, and we're just going to let it cook. I'm trying not to disturb it too much, but it's hard not to. I want to baby it a little bit. This is a real treat. Like I said, we use it especially scrambling eggs or making omelets, or I like to fry in oil my tortillas when I make tacos or breakfast burritos or anything like that, and this is what we use. You can use it, like I said, in place of lard. In most places, like in your cornbread, or let me tell you something. If you bake a lot of cakes, if you line your cake pans with ghee and then flour, the taste that is left on the outside of your cake is just amazing. It's a step above lard. And so if you ever try that, you probably won't go back. And I love lard, but when you're baking a cake, the ghee is far and above superior as far as lining your pans. But it's just good for you, and especially now if you have a problem with dairy, if you're lactose intolerant. Now you see we're beginning to see more and more of the golden color and less of the foam, and you see the bubbles are bigger and they're kind of coming to the surface and popping, and that's the moisture that's being released, and that's what makes this shelf stable. Moisture is an enemy to preserving something. So if we remove the moisture from this, that is what makes ghee shelf stable. But to get back to the dairy products, if you're intolerant of lactose or some type of dairy products, I would suggest that you could tolerate ghee, because we're removing the milk solids, and that's usually the culprit. So you might consider that. I would leave that, up to your own decision, but that would be something for you to consider and research, and it may open up an area of dairy that you can use and enjoy. Okay, so now you're beginning to see mostly oil. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit more, and I'm almost to the it's the very lowest flame that I can do. Now, I don't know if you can see, let's look. Now you see those milk solids, they're still white. When they get a tan or a light brown, then our ghee is ready. There's just a few floating on top and they will probably fall. But that's why you don't want to take and rub the bottom of your pot with your spoon or your spatula, because you don't want to break those loose. Now you see the bubbles are still pretty good size. That's the moisture that we're removing. You can see the golden oil, but we're still not quite tan or brown on the bottom. So you need to exercise some patience, and you need to be very conservative with your flame once you get your butter melted. You don't want a high flame or a high setting on your electric stove. Okay, so I'm going to show you. We're beginning to get a little bit of golden color to the milk solids on the bottom. Not quite there, but it's very, very close. And this is where you want to keep a very close eye, because it can go from brown, light brown, to scorched in just a split second. Look at, oh, look at there. That's what we're looking for. You see the golden brown? We've got ghee. So we're going to turn my flame off. If you have an electric stove, you want to remove it from the heat source immediately when you get to that point. Okay, so I'll be back in just a second. I'm going to get my jar out of the oven and we're going to pour up this beautiful ghee. Okay, I wanted to show you exactly what we're looking for. That is perfect. You see those golden brown milk solids on the bottom? That is perfect. So we're about to pour this up. My jar has been preheated because we don't want to pour hot oil into a cool jar, even though it's a mason jar. And by the way, it is an antique mason jar. I love antique jars, and I scour thrift stores and little secondhand shops looking for stuff like that. And I've got a couple of daughters that love them too. So at Christmas time, I try to find some pretty antique jars, and they love the gift of ghee at Christmas time. Okay, so let's pour this up, and I'll show you. Let me see if I can turn this around where you can see it going in a little better, the cloth. Okay. Now, we're just going to pour it like this, and this flour sack towel is going to capture any of the milk solids that did not stick to the bottom. And if you have chickens, a dog, or a cat, they will devour the milk solids. They love them. Look at that beautiful golden ghee. Oh my goodness. That right there is priceless to me. And this is something if you're off grid, or you dream of being off grid, this is something that you can put on your shelf, and it's very healthy. It is a great substitute for butter in most cases. In all cases really, but I still prefer to use unsalted butter in some of my bacon. But if I didn't have it, I would not hesitate to use ghee. Now, we cook this very slow and just let it go through its process in its different stages, so we had very little milk fat in the bottom, milk solids in the bottom of the towel. There are sometimes when there'll be as much as a tablespoon in there, but there's not many in there. But I can scrape this off the bottom for the chickens. They'll love it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set all of this aside. Now, this is very, very hot. So you want to place it in a place where it won't get knocked over or won't get away from children. You want it away from children and won't get knocked over or spilled and burn and injure someone. But you want to set it and not put a lid on it yet. I'm actually going to put another flour sack towel over it because of condensation, and because you don't want the moisture to build up in there, because we work so hard to get the moisture out because we want it to be safe to set on the shelf. So I'll be back in just a second. I got to go get another flour sack towel and we'll lay it over there and I'll have some final words. This is a beautiful jar of ghee, and you can see that it's still liquefied, but it's not hot. It's just barely warm now. So we're still going to be very careful with it. So I'm going to keep it covered like that until it completely cools down, and it'll solidify, and I'll put a lid on it, and then I can set it on my pantry and it'll be perfectly safe right there to use. Doesn't last long in this house, I promise you. Probably this jar will be gone within the month because we use it in a lot of things. But you can do this. You can follow the simple steps and you can be successful and learn a new skill to put you on that path to homesteading. And this was a gift straight from the hand of God to this little homestead. And I hope that I can always be ever mindful of where those gifts come from. But that's not the only gift that God has provided. He also provided the gift of His Son. And I want you to remember this. Don't ever forget that your Heavenly Father loves you. And I'll see you on the next video.